Thousands of anti-government protesters marched in the Serbian capital, demanding the resignation of top officials after a concrete roof at a railway station collapsed and killed 14 people earlier this month. Those rallying in Belgrade blamed the collapse of the roof on rampant corruption and sloppy renovation work on the station building in the northern Serbian city of Novi Sad. The several thousand protesters demanded that the Serbian Prime Minister and his government step down and that those responsible for the collapse be arrested. Authorities have opened an investigation and the Serbian construction minister resigned last week. But no one has yet been charged with the incident, which occurred on November the 1st. Serbian government officials have promised full accountability, but there is widespread skepticism as the populace control both the police and the judiciary. Parts of Spain recently flooded by deadly, devastating flash floods are now facing the buildup of rubbish and accompanying rats and health issues. Local authorities are calling for the organisation of military trucks to take rubbish from the areas affected to recycling and waste management plants. Though plants might not be that far away, congestion and ruined roads means it takes a long time for lorries to arrive there. The buildup of rubbish has created a public health problem, which was then exacerbated by the proliferation of rats following the flood. Almost 2 weeks after the floods, rescue teams in Valencia are working against the clock to locate the people still missing. The search efforts are intensifying in coastal parts of the region after floodgates linking the rivers and the sea were opened to facilitate the search for missing persons.
Authorities in Valencia have ruled out any imminent resignations from the regional government as anger continues to grow over the response to catastrophic flooding. Thousands of people staged a protest on Saturday night accusing the regional government of sending out public warnings about the dangers of the flooding too slowly. A group of protesters demanding the resignation of regional president Carlos Mazon clashed with riot police in front of the city hall. The EFE news agency said at least 31 police officers were injured in the violence. But the region's vice president said no one would be stepping down, as to do so would be a betrayal of the victims. At least 222 people have been killed in Spain's worst natural disaster in decades. The flooding started after torrential rain lashed the eastern region of Valencia on the 29th of October, with some areas receiving a year's worth of rain in just 8 hours. The central government in Madrid has mobilized thousands of troops and police officers to help with relief and cleanup operations. And thousands of ordinary citizens have also stepped up to help, with no definite estimate as to exactly how many have come forward. The full extent of the damage is unknown, but Spain's Consortium for Insurance Compensation estimates that it will pay out at least €3.5 billion in compensation.
The world is already becoming dangerously overheated, and the pace of climate change is accelerating, according to the World Meteorological Organization. They just released their latest Global State of the Climate report for 2024, showing that the past decade was the warmest on record. And it's exactly what scientists had predicted, according to Director General Celeste Saulo.
Está siendo más acentuado de lo esperado, pero no es una sorpresa y tenemos que reconocer que los científicos y científicas marcaron esto desde hace muchos años, más de 30 también, y que lo que es una sorpresa es la lentitud para reaccionar.
The UN's weather experts say that we are already at 1.3 degrees of warming compared to the pre-industrial average, and we are already seeing unprecedented sea surface temperatures, melting at the ice caps, droughts, and of course floods like we saw in Spain.
Creo que las personas no estamos preparadas para eventos de esa naturaleza, que existe un terrible desafío en cómo armar protocolos que permitan que las personas se preparen y reaccionen de manera adecuada para la intensidad de los fenómenos que estamos enfrentando.
It's a grim outlook. Greenhouse gas emissions may be falling in Europe, But they're still rising around the globe, and it doesn't matter to the atmosphere whether the CO2 was emitted in Beijing, Baku or Berlin. More heat-trapping gases in the atmosphere means more warming for everyone, and that's the bottom line. Jeremy Wilkes at COP29 in Baku in Azerbaijan for Euronews.
The Franco-German alliance has stalled. Weakened domestically, both governments now face greater challenges in promoting their agendas in Europe. In Germany, the traffic light coalition fell apart after the finance minister's dismissal. In France, Macron's political support has significantly eroded.
The snap elections in France throughout the summer really weakened Macron and impacted his, room for maneuver in the European discussions on common debt. For instance, when the Draghi paper came out, he was in a much weaker position to push for this than before the snap elections and the European elections. Similar for Scholz, who now hasn't been invited by the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk to a European meeting that President Macron, the leader of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer, and others will attend.
After Donald Trump's election, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk announced plans to meet with European leaders to discuss EU defense policy. NATO leaders, along with those from the UK, France, the Baltics and Scandinavia, will be invited. Yet, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz hasn't received an invitation. Germany's political crisis couldn't come at a worse time. With Trump soon returning to the White House, he may attempt to sow divisions within the EU.
Donald Trump has every interest to bilateralize transatlantic relations because he knows that if he speaks to Viktor Orban, to Emmanuel Macron, to Olaf Scholz or his successor bilaterally, that he will have much more weight in tariff discussions, in discussions on European defense, than if he would speak to a bloc of 27 EU member states that have a common position. And I think that's a big risk right now.
The threat of recession in Germany could place additional stress on the Franco-German engine. Germany, the EU's largest economy, will be focused on the election campaign as Trump returns and threatens to impose tariffs on European imports.
Two Germans set a new world record on Saturday by walking on a slack line stretched between two flying hot air balloons at a height of 2,500 meters during the performance at the German city of Riedering. Freddy Kuhner and Lucas Jemler shattered the previous record of 1,900 meters set in Brazil in 2021 by 600 meters. Kuhner is best known for his records balancing on particularly high ropes without a safety device, while Lucas Jemler in 2019 gained fame for covering the longest distance in the world on a slack line, 2 kilometers long.
Geil! Wir sind wieder auf festem Boden, Mann. Das fühlt sich Hammer an, den Weltrekord endlich geknackt zu haben. Ich meine, wir haben so lange darauf hingefiebert und das jetzt endlich gemacht zu haben, ist schon ein bisschen surreal eigentlich.
The two friends are no strangers to the slackline scene and already hold several world records.
Tens of thousands of revelers gathered across Germany to celebrate Carnival amidst tight security. Thousands of people in masquerade costumes were not deterred by the bad weather in German cities like Cologne and Düsseldorf, with garbage bags particularly popular at kiosks so they could be used as overcoats against the rain. Cologne's mayor said Carnival came at the right time and that she was convinced everyone could use a bit of energy in the crises being experienced. 300 employees of the Public Order Office and more than 1,000 employees of private security companies were also on the streets on behalf of the city. The origins of Carnival trace back to the Middle Ages when people wanted to escape from the harsh winter chill, with celebrations providing a respite.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has arrived in Paris to join French President Emmanuel Macron for a ceremony marking the 106th anniversary of the armistice. Their meeting signifies a celebration of the two countries' friendship, as nations across the world pay tribute to their fallen soldiers in World War I. This year also marks the 120th anniversary of the Entente Cordiale, the historic agreement between France and the United Kingdom. Starmer was personally invited to Paris by Emmanuel Macron, and the two leaders are expected to discuss a number of foreign policy issues, including the war in Ukraine and the conflict in the Middle East. The trip marks a significant step in Starmer's plans to reset relations with the European Union following the UK's exit in 2020. At least 3 people have died in an Israeli strike on the Nuseirat refugee camp in central Gaza. The strike hit a tent sheltering a displaced family, wounding 2 children and killing their parents, one of which was a photojournalist. Around 24 people were wounded in the attack and taken to the Auda hospital in Nuseirat, according to the head of the hospital's ambulance service. As Israel intensifies its military campaign in northern Gaza, hundreds of Palestinians are also fleeing Jabalia, where an Israeli strike on a house killed at least 32 people over the weekend. Meanwhile, Israel's Air Force attacked an aid convoy and forced the closure of Syria's main north-south highway, according to the country's state media. Yemen's Houthi rebels also claimed to have launched a missile at northern Israel, which the IDF says was intercepted.